We're now going to turn our attention to one of the key transforming operators defined in the Flux class. And here we'll be talking about a transforming operator called map, which can be used to transform the values and/or the type that's emitted by a flux. As I mentioned before, the map operator is used to transform the items that are emitted by a particular flux. You can call this on a flux to do the transformation. It's passed a synchronous function using Java 8 function as the parameter, and this is used to transform each item that's emitted by the flux. This mapper might terminate if it throws an exception. So if it turns out that the mapper function here throws an exception, that will cause the map method to terminate without going through all the elements in the stream. So be careful about that. It's certainly a legitimate thing to do, but you may want to have some kind of error handler that we'll talk about later to catch exceptions and then perhaps give back default values or do something else. The map method returns a transformed flux. Now, a couple things to note about map, and this should be very familiar to you if you're familiar with the map operation. It's part of Java streams. The first thing to note is that the number of output items that are returned from map must match the number of input items. So you can see here where we say flux.fromIterable, and we're going to give it a big fraction list. And then we're going to take each of those big fractions that are emitted from that factory method, and we're going to go ahead and multiply them by a constant. So each one will be multiplied by the constant. And we'll take a look at this example when we get a little further along into our case study. Some interesting things to note: map can transform the type and/or it can transform the value of the elements that it processes. RxJava also has a map operation that works exactly the same way. So as you can see in this example, we use observable, and we start out with the fromIterable factory method, and we take our big fraction list, and we create an observable that's going to emit each of those big fractions in that list. And then we're going to go ahead, once again, as we did with Project Reactor's map, and go ahead and map each of those big fractions by multiplying it by some constant. So same basic idea that we saw earlier, except now done with RxJava, not Project Reactor. As I mentioned before, the semantics of map that are part of RxJava and Project Reactor are very, very similar to the map operation that's defined in Java streams and its map operation. Here's a very simple example where we go ahead and create a list of 3 elements, 3 strings in the stream, and then we go ahead and call the map operation, and we're going to uppercase each of those strings, and then we're going to collect the results into a list and store it in a value called collect. So again, just demonstrating you can do the same basic kind of idea with Java streams that you can do with RxJava and Project Reactor. We'll talk later about some other transforming operations, but this is a good place to start to give you one of the fundamental ones, which is the map transforming operator.